Stephanie Rogers, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in the US. In today's card, I'm going to be using the Dragonfly Garden stamp set, and along with the stamp set is a coordinating Dragonfly Punch. And these two go together, and this is the card that I'll be making for you in this video today using Pool Party and Basic White. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this aside. I'm going to give you the measurements right now, so if you have something to write with, here it is. The card base is 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and it's scored at 5 1/2. And then you're going to cut 2 pieces of basic white, and they measure at 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch. And you're going to cut 2 exactly the same. Then you're going to get your designer series paper, and this is cut at 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch. And you're going to need a strip of basic white, and this one is measured at 1 1/8 inch by 3 3/4 inches. And then you're going to need a strip for the sentiment, and this one measures at 1 inch by 3 3/4 inches. And I'm letting you know I'm using the same color cardstock for the sentiment and the card base. And then you're also going to need some scrap paper, basic white. This is what I'll be doing my stamping and punching on, and then an envelope which I will decorate at the end. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my card base, and I like to use the bone folder because I like a nice crisp fold, and it keeps my card laying flat. So there's the card base. We're going to set that aside. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the stamping. And I'm going to be stamping the dragonfly. And I'm just showing you there's 2 different dragonflies. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up the stamping. Okay, now that the stamping's done, I'm going to take the punch, the coordinating punch to the dragonfly, and I'm going to punch out all the 4 stamped dragonflies. And here I'm just kind of lining it up, making sure I've kind of got an even punch all around the dragonfly stamp. And I'm going to go ahead and continue this on through all 4 of them. Okay, now that I have all my dragonflies punched out, there's 4 of them. Look how cute they are. I'm going to move on to stamping the sentiment. And to stamp the sentiment, I'm using the Stamparatus. And then I'm opening up the Stamparatus, and I'm going to put in some grid paper, and then I'm going to plop down my sentiment. And then I am aligning it up best that I can. I don't have the sticker on this particular stamp, but we're just going to test it. But before I ink up the stamp, well, first I got to grab it. I'm going to put a notebook underneath the plate, so that way I'm not pressing down on the hinges, and it just kind of keeps the plate straight and flat. And I only do this when I'm inking my stamp on, when I'm using the Stamparatus and inking my stamps, is what I'm trying to say. And now I'm just going to stamp right here on the grid paper, just to see if my stamp is lined up. It's not quite as straight as I would like, so I'm going to try to, best I can, straighten it a little bit so you can just see I'm just barely moving it and adjusting it. But you can see I'm going to stamp it again, and I didn't realize that I'm stamping it right over the first image that I stamped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the plate up and I'm going to move it down one notch. One thing I like about the Stamparatus is it's versatile and you can actually move the plate around instead of having to move your stamps. So now I'm going to stamp it a third time in a clean space just to see if I have it straight, and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to move the plate back up to the original spot, because off camera that I don't show you is I made little pencil marks of where I'm going to place my cardstock, and so that's why I moved the plate back up. And I'm just looking for the magnets on the back so that way I can hold down the cardstock with a magnet, and that way it won't slip or slide. And we got that there. I'm going to ink the sentiment up again and stamp the image, pressing firmly. Pick it up. It looks great. But now I'm thinking the one thing with the Stamparatus is nice is that you can, stamp it again. And so that's what I'm doing here is I'm inking it up and I'm going to stamp it again, but I'm hoping that that small font on the bottom isn't going to bleed. And so I'm kind of like second guessing myself. Should I? I'm not sure. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Let's just see what it does. And when I pull it up, I actually was pleasantly surprised. It actually stamped really nice. So there is the sentiment, and now we're going to put the card together. I am just kind of deciding on, what to do first, and so I'm going to do the kind of the mat and the base that's going to go on the card base, or the larger spot. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I'm putting a little glue along the edges, and I just scribble a little bit in the center, just so you can see that. And then with the grid paper, I am using it to line up the Designer Series paper. And I can't quite pick it up with my nail, so I have to slide it off. And that kind of didn't allow me to adjust the cardstock enough, because you literally just have like a couple seconds to move your paper, because the longer it's together with the glue, then the harder it's going to be to move. And so now I'm doing the sentiment, putting some glue on the sentiment, and I'm going to adhere it to the mat of the basic white. Now this one, it's only going to give a mat to the top and bottom and not the sides. And I just kind of like that look where it's just highlighting and giving it a little bit of highlight, and if you really want to look at it that way, but it's not kind of framing it. And they're just kind of making sure it's adhered. So now comes the time where I am going to take a lot of time deciding on, how should I place my dragonflies and my sentiment. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you can see the dragonflies and the sentiment. And this is where I'm going to stop and cut away to where we get to adhere, because I kid you not, I spend way too much time trying to decide, is the sentiment straight? Is it not straight? How am I going to line it up? Maybe I should use a pencil to, mark where I need to place it. And so I'm going to kind of stop the video. Well, not really, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to cut the video about that time, just because, yeah, you would be really bored with, how much time I try to take to get the sentiment straight and where I'm going to be putting these dragonflies. And I'm trying to just eyeball it, but I'm just, I'm like, no, let me move it. let me grab a pencil. Yes, that's what I need to do. I'm going to count my squares, and then I'm going to use a pencil to mark the line. So see me here, I'm kind of counting, how many squares that the card takes up, from the bottom line and the top line, and then, from the middle line up to the top, how many squares. So I'm actually like doing math here, and as much as math is kind of fun, but not when you're trying to make a greeting card. So I'm just, yeah, again, see how I'm fussing so much with like where I'm going to place it. And this is what happens when you are, spending too much time, making the card just perfect. Because you know who's the only one that's going to know that it's not quite centered? Is you, the card maker. And here's my pencil. This is what I was saying. So I'm kind of marking where I'm putting this and that, and then I'm going to be like making, dashes on the grid paper as well. And I'm going to wait till you see me. So I'm counting again, how many, and I'm making it. Okay, this is where I'm going to stop it. Okay, you can see all my little pencil marks off to the sides there. Yeah, I probably spent a good like 3 to 4 minutes trying to figure out where I'm going to adhere it. So here now I'm just going to get some glue, and I'm going to glue it down. I'm just lining it up. After all that, I actually end up not gluing it quite in the center. Nope, it was down just like 1/8 of an inch, kind of too low. And so I spent all that time for nothing. So now I'm going to be trying to decide where I'm going to place the butterflies. And again, I'm going to kind of jump ahead so you don't see me fussing around that either. Okay, so now I know where I'm going to adhere my dragonflies. 2 of them I'm going to pop up with dimensionals, and these are those 2, so I'm going to kind of set them off to the side, and I'm going to glue these 2 dragonflies down onto the DSP. So I'm just adding a little bit of glue. If you've never used Tombow glue before, it does take some practice on just being able to get just enough glue and not too much glue out. So just know if it's first time using multi-purpose glue, it may take some time to get used to it. You'll kind of get the feel of how much pressure you'll need. And so those 2 are down. These ones are going to be popped up with dimensionals. And see, I'm like, oh, I can't slide it down. So I'm just going to go with it. But as you can see, it's kind of tight there because, well, the sentiment is not quite center. Again, like I said, it's like 1/8 of an inch lower than I want it to be. So what I'm doing is I'm first going to adhere this piece to the card base before I do the dimensional the dragonflies, pop the dragonflies up, and that way, because I'm going to press down firmly on the cardstock, and when you've got popped up embellishments or dimensional pieces, I guess, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, you don't want to press on them too much. So that's why I'm doing the card base. And again, I am using the grid paper to kind of eyeball and line it up. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is bring in the dimensionals. And Stampin' Up! Sells 2 sizes of dimensionals, a regular size and the mini size. I'm actually going to be using both of these dimensionals to pop up the dragonflies, and then with the mini dimensional, I'm actually going to be cutting it in half and placing one near the head and then one near the tail. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just speed this part through, and I'll be back in a moment. front of the card is finished, and now it's time to do the inside of the card. I'm going to put away the scissors. All right, so here is the inside of the card, and I believe this measures at, I want to say 5¼ inch by 4 inches. I'm not quite sure. I usually have about 1/8, no, maybe a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch on the inside, but it's whatever you like to do. And so I'm just doing a one-off stamp where I'm just going to stamp on my scratch paper, and then without inking the stamp up again, I'm going to stamp it a second time. And that way it's a very soft image. It's not so bold. It's just soft and subtle, because the inside of the card is really, your greeting. What are you going to write to the recipient of the card? So for when I use Tombow glue for the inside of the card, I only put glue around the edges. And the reason I don't put any glue in the center is because you're going to be writing on that. Also, when I am adhering the inside of the card, I always line up the bottom edge first, because that one, it's more noticeable that it's kind of straight than it does at the top. At the top, you don't really notice it as much if it's not quite centered. And so there's the inside of the cards done. And the last thing I'm going to be showing you is how I am going to coordinate an envelope to go with the card. So I'm using this stamp set, or I should say this stamp that comes in the same Dragonfly stamp set as the Dragonflies, and it's just, I don't know what it's like, 6 little Dragonflies. I'm just trying to decide, where do I want to stamp it? Do I want to stamp it more than once? On the back, on the front? And then I think I finally just decide I'm just going to, make it basic, and I'm just going to stamp right in the bottom corner. Just one little stamp. That way it doesn't really take away from the address. And there. So there's the cute little Dragonflies. But I thought, I really want to stamp one of the Dragonflies on the back. So I'm going to stamp one of the Dragonflies at full strength. I'm not going to stamp off. I'm just going to stamp it down. I'm trying to use the grid paper to line up the center. And I've got something on my envelope, but I figured I'm going to stamp over it anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then there's that. And that's it. So I just made a matching envelope, and here's the card in this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. Click the notification bell. And if you are not on my email list, be sure to sign up for my emails. I do send out weekly emails with some project ideas, tips, and anything else I feel like sharing for the week. So go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.